Hello, everyone. My name is David McLeod. I'm your life mastery coach. Welcome to Magnificence in Motion. This is my new program that I'm doing now on the first and third Wednesdays of the month at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And today, this is episode number 3. My topic title today is called Navigating LifeQuakes. I think that's a great word, LifeQuakes. And joining me today is my beautiful friend, Sarah Jane, who is a vocal Reiki master and has all kinds of other great tools in her tool belt. And she's going to help me with this conversation today. Actually, it's her fault because she made up the term LifeQuakes, as far as I know.
I didn't.
But I thought this is a great topic. And I think the idea of a lifequake is something that pretty much everybody can relate to, even if they don't necessarily know exactly what that word means. So, Sarah Jane, welcome, first of all. Thank you for being here. I'm so delighted. You and I have known each other now for, oh my goodness, it's got to be 12 or 13 years by now,
Yeah.
maybe even longer. And we've had so many conversations together. I think all told, we've probably, I would bet, we're getting close to 100 conversations that we have recorded online. And, you know, with my Life Mastery TV, with Soul Empowerment, with Gifts of Healing, with today's conversation, and so many other ways that we have shared space. It's just been a real honor and a joy to be able to get to know you and to have fun doing this work together. So thank you so much for joining me all the way from, oh my God, you tell us where you're from, because I don't want to mess it up.
Hello, David. Thank you so very much. And yes, we've known each other since 2012 Messenger Summit in San Diego. Yes, I'm in the UK. It's not such a little place called Bournemouth. It's a sort of a massive conurbation that takes in a place called Poole and Christchurch. So yeah. Well, let's put it this way: there is no gap between them anymore. So.
Right.
They've filled it all in. And yes, it's been a pleasure because yes, today's conversation, soul empowerment, the book the Gift of Wisdom book that
Right.
you did, there have been so many things that we've collaborated on, and they're going to be more too. So
Right.
Yeah, it's been a great journey. And gratefully we did at least meet personally.
Right. Yes, we've had that opportunity. I think it was actually 2 times that happened, right? We did it. We met once in San Diego for the not the Gifts of Wisdom, the Messenger Summit, and then we met again in person for Rachel Groover's program. I can't remember what that's called, but that was about speaking and presenting and
Speakers Academy.
Yeah, that was good time too. Yeah. Anyway, I know that you and I always have a good time when we're together, and I'm sure today is going to be no different. And you mentioned our book, Gifts of Wisdom, Practices for Healing and Empowerment, which got published in October, and it achieved a #1 international best-selling status. I'm so grateful for that. And I couldn't have done it without people like you contributing amazing, amazing, beautiful chapters and sharing life wisdom that, you know, that helps people, I think, in many, many different ways. We just never know who we are going to touch with our words, with our energy. And I know that you had quite an experience with that. You want to share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, I'm it was the second multi-author book I've done. After the Messenger Summit, I got invited to do another one, through Randy Davila and Hierophant Publishing. And that was called No Mistakes. I can't remember the rest of the title, but it was called No Mistakes. And it wasn't the best of experiences. I won't go into what happened. And I thought, and this is like 11, 12 years later doing yours. And I thought, and it's going to be something totally different. So quite happy to step into that. But, it was very much that thing of, I'm English. I've been taught English ways, and we speak the same language, but we don't.
Right. Yep.
And we have different ways of doing things. We have different ways of spelling things, and it was, I suppose it's that feeling heard thing. And that was all part of the story I shared in Gifts of Wisdom, sort of what happened to me as a child. And it really was that, you know, I've shared in my voice the way I write, the way I've been taught to write, the way I've been taught to speak. And it was changed, not hugely, but enough.
Mm.
and it was just like, and it was a trigger. It was an absolute trigger. Now, don't get me wrong, it was a brilliant experience, and I am so grateful for it. I really am, because without it, I wouldn't have registered that, in spite of the fact I spent so many years as a people pleaser, I hadn't realized just how much anger was bottled up inside me.
Mm.
That's obvious. And so it was a catalyst, not for me to explode, but for me to explore that. And one of those things was obviously not understanding that as the child, that baby in hospital who would cry for a mother and would be ignored, didn't feel she had a voice. I didn't feel I had a voice for so many years. And then I felt my voice was being ignored to a certain extent yet again. So it doesn't have to be a LifeQuake. And no, I did not make that word up. I saw it on social media and it was just like, oh, wow. And actually, a few people have heard me I've sort of mentioned it to people. That is brilliant. And I said, well, it's not mine. I don't know who said it, created it, made it up, whatever. But it was, it just spoke to me, because I always tend to talk about a healing, not a healing crisis, my wake-up call. And I just thought, actually, LifeQuake, it is the wake-up call, but it's good to find different terminology occasionally, because some terminology can become so old hat. So it was another little LifeQuake in my life. It was another little sort of, yes, okay, right. Now I can do the work I require to do to get to resolve that. Sort of, as much as I've done masses of work and my little one does feel heard, there's obviously stuff in there still.
Well, that's an interesting perspective for sure. I know that, well, first of all, I want to say about the book, I thought your chapter was absolutely brilliant. I loved reading your chapter because, I've heard your story verbally expressed in a number of occasions, but I never saw it written down. And I was really deeply touched by it. I thought it was a very powerful story. I thought there was lots of great life lessons in there. And I'm really grateful that you wrote it. I wasn't aware of the, let's say, external editing that had taken place on your document. Now that you mention it, though, it's quite, I can see how that could have happened. I know that we have our own publisher, and she has her own way of doing things. And, I read people's chapters, but I didn't see them before they were edited. I saw them once they were ready for prime time, so to speak. And so I just assumed that's how you had written it. And so my apologies to you. It certainly wasn't. I'm sure nobody intended to create a scenario in which you weren't being heard. And I'm certain that there was no intention to, flip any triggers or anything like that. But anyhow, I just want you to know that I'm just so very grateful for your chapter and for what you contributed. And what you contribute in so many different ways elsewhere in the world. It's one of the things I love so much about you. I got to know you back in 2000. I thought it was 2011, but maybe it was 2012. In any event, having the opportunity to share a hug with you and to feel your energy, that's awesome. And I kind of miss that. It'd be nice to be able to meet again in person. And who knows, that may happen.
It may. It may. But I think.
But now here you are. You've written 2 collaborative books or participated in 2 collaborative books, and now you're leading your own collaboration.
Yeah.
That must be something of a LifeQuake for you.
Well, yes, it was. But I think, firstly, I am so grateful for doing that book, you know, because I know how powerful my story is, because I lived it, but I have no memories of it. But it's being able to share that supports people. That's really important. But the new book was 1st of April last year. And I know you've got a sense of this already, but April Fool's Day, All Fool's Day, 1st of April last year, I wrote a short article which I put on my own personal website. I had seen a title again on social media, and I still couldn't find out who said it, but the words absolutely spoke to me. And those words were, "You didn't become selfish, you became harder to manipulate."
Right.
And knowing how I am and talking to people, it's just like, will you stand, not, I don't actually say it this way, but it's like, will you stand up for yourself? Stop letting people dictate to you. You know, this is your life, live it. You know, clients that come to me, allow yourself downtime, allow yourself me time. It's really important. You have to recharge your own batteries. You can't do it all for everyone. And where are you on the list? You know,
Yeah,
so
right. Yeah.
all really important. And so I just wrote this little article, and I always record myself reading those and put that video on YouTube. And the following morning, I think I had a notification from YouTube with a couple of people had commented under it. And I went in and I had a look to see that, I know, it was 200 or 300 people had seen the thing overnight. And it was just like, what? That, I mean, that never happened. It just never happens. And then those messages about comments just kept coming in and kept coming in, day on day on day. The numbers were shooting up into the 1,000, the 2,000, the 3,000, the 4,000. And over 600 comments to date. It looks like it's 1,200, but I've responded to all of them.
Right.
Every comment that was put up. Yes, I am going to admit there were a couple that got deleted, but there were a couple I was about, but I thought, no, I just comment from my own perspective. If I didn't understand what people were saying, I would say, can you elaborate, you know, sort of, you know, but I commented, I went back to every single one of them. And it over 12,000 likes, comments saying, thank you so much. The title was all I needed. Thank you for your share. I now know it's not me. You know, thank you. I needed that so very much. People actually sharing aspects of their own story. It was phenomenal, the response. And to date, it's had just over 98,000 hits.
You mean views? People have watched it that many times? Right. That's awesome. That's fantastic.
But that just says to me how important that is as a title. So I was actually telling my sister, I said, I'm never doing another multi-author book. And she goes to me, she says, Sarah, but you are, and you're going to lead it. It's just like, thanks, Jackie. And that was like on the Sunday, and sort of when I knew I'd got sort of in the tens of thousands of hits at that stage, and it took me 2 days to realize, okay, I know what this book's about. It's got to be. And rather than putting it as you didn't, it was I didn't become selfish. I became harder to manipulate. And David, thank you for being part of it. I am going to do things slightly different. It's going to be an ebook, and we're going to record those chapters being read by the author, because I feel, yeah, I know when I read my chapter, I was able to put my energies into it. And I'm hoping that everybody can do the same within their own story. And that the aim is it will be an ebook, and the link to the recordings for the audios will be in the ebook, so that it's not you've got to buy one, you've got to buy the other, you get the two together. I'm a great believer in doing things differently.
And I've never noticed that.
only our own unique selves. So,
Of course, yeah.
And having spent so many years as a people pleaser and needing my LifeQuake, sort of, I don't like following the curve.
Right. No, I totally understand. And yeah, I think this is going to be an amazing book. How many authors do you have on this one?
It's mid-20s to 30. I'm still waiting for a couple of chapters to come in. So once I've got all them in, and I can say, right, fine, sort of,
Yeah.
and I know what.
Now, that's a lot of people to contribute to a book.
Yeah.
And if each one is doing 2,000 words, I mean, that gives you 60,000 words or so, plus whatever additional stuff you want to write. And so, 120, 130 pages, something like that. And yeah, I'm delighted to be a part of this. I think it's a great topic. Manipulation is a big deal for a lot of people. I mean, I know my chapter, I wrote about, systemic manipulation through this concept of conditioning and indoctrination. And I certainly experienced it. I'm pretty sure everybody experiences it on one level or another. And the problem is, by giving in to that kind of energy, what we end up doing is disowning ourselves. We end up abandoning our true sovereignty, our true authority, in favor of trying to keep other people happy and to make sure that we're not rocking the boat or making waves or any other metaphor you might care to name. We want to be good citizens. We want to be good, law-abiding people in our community. We want to be supportive. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be that way. But the problem is, if we're losing ourselves in the process, then we're actually creating misery for ourselves. That certainly was true for me. And it took a major life quake in my case. I mean, an absolutely major one, to kind of shake me out of that and to realize it's time to reclaim the truth of who I am. You can still be a decent person. You can still be loving. You can still be a good, positive, contributing member of society without giving up your true nature. That's what we're missing, I think, in our world. So
I think
anyway.
It's the use of that word selfish, because that, to be perfectly honest, I'm not going to say it's in every case, because there are people out there who are the genuine meaning of the word selfish. There really are. But most of the time, certainly if you've been a people pleaser, you're trying to support others, but they think you're letting them down. They're projecting how they are. And I've said for a long time, before this word LifeQuake, before even this title came up, was, it is really important that we are true to ourselves, and actually know to hear a no or to give a no can be the greatest gift we can receive or give. Because when you're constantly saying yes to people, to me, what you're doing is you're holding two people back. You're holding yourself back, because while you're doing for them, you can't be actually living your own life and doing for yourself. But you're holding them back because you're not encouraging them to do things for themselves and to grow for themselves. And the LifeQuake, it has to happen for too many people. How many stories have you heard? Neil Donald Walsh and so many other people, the stories they tell of their life, and they have that LifeQuake.
Yeah.
And he found himself living on the streets before he wrote Conversations with God. People have had their lives fall apart where they find themselves losing everything. They're on the street, marriages break up, children die. All sorts of things happen to us in different ways. Mine was relatively minor per se, but it was what I required because it left me so exhausted. A lack of sleep, with pain in your face, is not something you can live with for too long without having to say enough.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, you know, it's interesting. You mentioned something about how yours may not have been as earth-shattering as some people's. And I always like to remind people there's no point in comparing,
yeah,
because each of us has the kind of wake up scenario that's important for us. Each of us has that. And it could be from an external perspective, it could be more or less traumatic. You know, there's no point in comparing, and there's no point in saying, well, I never went through nearly as much as you did. Now you're just demeaning yourself again. You know, now you're minimizing yourself again, and that's not helpful. Each of us goes through our own journey in our own way, and I also believe on some level we do this as part of our own kind of spiritual plan that we may have known about before we brought ourselves into this physical world. And the thing is, we tend to forget about all those details in that plan. You know, we forget all about it. That's certainly true for me, and I know most people I talk to, they say the same thing. Yeah, if that really happened, I don't remember any of it. And so it's really sad, as you say, that it's sad that it seems to come to a place of complete breakdown. You know, we got to have a divorce. You got to have some other kind of weird trauma. You got to break up. You got to do this. You got to do that in order to be able to wake up to the truth of who you are. That seems like that shouldn't be that way. And part of what I am doing, and I'm sure what you're doing too, is trying to help people wake up without going through that kind of horrible, unpleasant LifeQuake kind of thing, you know?
100%, 100%. You know, sort of, I did end up with the job being taken away from me, getting out of my marriage, but I didn't see those as a negative. I saw them as part, because they all happened within a period of time. It was all part and parcel of the process.
Right.
And I would never, ever change anything that has happened in my life. The scolding as a baby, that feeling abandoned and rejected, I wouldn't change any of it, because I wouldn't be able to do what I do today without it. I wouldn't be able to help people to connect with and support their inner child back to a much better place if I hadn't had the experience that had left me in that bad place. You know, sort of, and the wake up, the LifeQuake, you know, the broken jaw, sort of, yes, it had the other things that went with it. It absolutely did. But by the time they happened, I'd already said, end of marriage. Okay, the job's now going. Great. I can move forward in my life. I was very lucky. I didn't see that side of things as being a negative, but it was me that broke my marriage up. It wasn't him. So I was in control. It was almost as if I'd taken back control. The job going was a real godsend. It helped me to move down to Bournemouth, where I am now. So and I wasn't even on this path at this time, but there was that aspect somewhere deep within me that understood. And when I think about the purchase of my little house after I got down here, I'd taken that step to leave my marriage. The universe then took the job away, but which supported me to move. And I'd put an offer in on one house, and it was just before Christmas, or it was between Christmas and New Year, and I had another letter from an estate agent through the door, and I wouldn't open it to start with. I thought, no, I've put an offer on the house and I've had it accepted. And I said, okay, I'll open it, and if that house is vacant possession, then I'll think about taking a look. I opened it, there was one sheet of paper, and that house was vacant possession. And that was the one I ended up by buying. It cost me less. I had less work to do on it. It was actually closer to, between Poole and Bournemouth. You know, sort of, I started off working in Paul, and we moved to Bournemouth, and sort of I took redundancy from the company, them practically having moved me down without realizing it. All of these things felt totally into place for me,
Right.
because I was prepared to take the actions to make things happen. And we've got to participate in our own lives. And it's very easy to sink. It really is easy to sink. And I have had that. It was only over a weekend. And the thought, I don't know why, and it was once I had the house and, you know, things were on the up. Maybe I hadn't been, maybe it was in a period where I wasn't actually well. I came very close to having ME. But
What's that? ME?
It basically, they called it yuppie flu. And I went into work, and it was just like, oh, if I don't sit down, I'm going to fall down. And it was just like, it was as if the total energy had been drained from me. And it was not a nice place to be. Then you fine again. But their reaction at work was, okay, Sarah, and you're not driving. They took me home. Somebody drove my car home for me and went down to the doctors, signed me off. I was off work for 2 months.
Wow.
But they weren't doctors that were sort of open to this. But my mother had had it, and she said, Sarah, I'm pretty certain that's what you got. It took so much to get me out of bed. And then I'd have to sit down, you know, trying to get a meal. It's just like anything exhausted me. It was no fun. I used to love walking on the local. I used to love walking on the local heathland, and I went out for a walk one day, and I got to the stage where there was nowhere to sit, and it was just like, I don't know whether I can put one foot in front of the other.
Wow.
But I had to get myself home, because there was no one there, nothing I could do, nothing, except for make myself put that one foot in front of the other.
Right.
But I do remember sinking, and it was only over, it must have been over some sort of bank holiday or something, sinking, and I had 3 days, and it was just like, and the thought of suicide, and I was just like, hang on, where did that come from? And it was just like, no, I'm better than this, I'm stronger than this, and it's going. I'm not having this. And so I actually had the strength to pull myself out of it. And it was just like, whoa, no, that thought, no, my life's, I'm taken back my life. Nothing's going to take that away from me now. So yeah, I know what it's like to sink that low, but not for too long, because I wasn't having it.
Right. Well, good for you. Yeah.
So,
And you're right. You know, sometimes that's what it feels like, you know, that sinking feeling like, oh my God, I'm stuck in quicksand and I can't get out, you know, not that I've ever been in quicksand, so I don't really know for sure if that's what it's like, but I'm imagining what it's like. You know what I mean? And, you know, I often think about my life in similar manner. You know, there are certain aspects of my life that I don't think I'd like to want to repeat. But I am grateful that they happened. And if, you know, I also believe that certainly everything that's happened in my life led me to where I am now. But that doesn't mean that I couldn't have gotten here by some other route. You know, it's possible that could have happened. But the problem is with that thinking is I wouldn't have had all of those same experiences, and I wouldn't have the same wisdom. You know, it's pretty unlikely that I would have exactly the same wisdom, the same gifts, and all that kind of stuff. So I think it does pay off to start looking at our lives from a place of, first of all, awareness and acceptance to begin with. And then once you understand and can really see what happened in your life, then you can start to think about, wow, look what I got out of that, and start becoming grateful for everything that happened. When gratitude enters your life, that is a whole huge shift on its own. You know, for a lot of people, the idea of gratitude is, oh, I just say thank you when somebody gives me something or whatever. And certainly that is an aspect of gratitude. But having an attitude of gratitude is a whole different kettle of fish. It means that you have reached a point in your life where you can say thank you for this moment, even if you're in the middle of a traffic jam or some other thing that ordinarily would irritate you or upset you or whatever. When you get to that place where you can say thank you for this moment, pretty much everything else just kind of falls away. And after all, even in the darkest of times, this very moment right now is perfection. You're not, you may have all kinds of weird stuff going on around you, but you yourself are here now. And that in itself is a perfect thing. It's really quite amazing. But it takes a mindset shift. You can't just keep holding on to your old ways of thinking and expect to just magically improve. You have to start shifting your mind. You have to start shifting the way you think. You have to start healing your old wounds. And as you say, reaching in and loving that inner child and bringing healing to that inner child and any of the circumstances that might have happened to cause pain for that inner child. That's really what this is about. And it's so easy to say it and so much harder to actually do it.
I love the quote by Alice Little, and I never get it 100% perfect. As a traumatized child, we were desperately waiting for the adult that would come and save us. What we didn't understand was that it would be ourselves as an adult. And when I first read that, it was just like, it's so true. When I started to connect with my baby Jane, because Jane was what I was called as a child, when I first started connecting with her, I didn't have to relive what happened. It wasn't about reliving that, because really it's the point at which, this is the way I see it, the point at which, what's the child feeling? And, and for crying out loud, I was less than a year old when the accident occurred, and then, yes, I was manipulated. My parents were manipulated by the system. No, you can only come and see her every other day for an hour. Circumstances meant it was once a week for an hour. What does that do to the child? They know that now. That's an emotional and mental level trauma on top of the physical trauma that I'd had.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Sort of, and then other stuff that occurs as well, because life just moves on. That understanding that Jane didn't have to revisit that. What was important was that I was there for that little girl to give her the hugs and the cuddles that she didn't get when she required them. That was the important thing. When she was able, and at that age, no, you can't actually vocalize what you're feeling. You don't have any idea what the feelings actually even are. You can't put a name to them. But when you're revisiting, they actually probably can tell you, because you get a sense of what they must be going through or must have gone through, even if there are no memories of that. And when they feel listened to and heard, and that was obviously one of the biggest things for me, and around my own wake-up call, the way my now ex-husband, actually ex for quite a few years, ex-husband was, it's just like, oh, there's your bowl of soup, and the following morning, now you can get on with it. Jaw's been wired up, 2-hour operation, you look fine, you obviously are okay, just get on with it. 6 months of pain and sleepless night that's followed, and I'm still being treated as if I've got to do everything around the house, work full time. I am so pleased I didn't have children. And studying as well, and people pleasing.
Yeah.
But I still wouldn't change any of it. I wouldn't change the accident. I wouldn't change the circumstances. I wouldn't change any of it, because I see it as gifts. I'm going to talk personally about me. I see them as gifts I gave myself so that I could live my life purpose.
Right.
They may not have felt like it at the time, but I understand that now.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting you talk about this idea of being re-traumatized. I think that's an overused term, frankly. And most of us, when we have some kind of an emotional trauma of some kind, most of us tend to squash it down and hide it away somewhere. We might release some of it. We might express some of the trauma when it's happening, but we squeeze most of it down. And one thing I've learned for myself, I had squashed down so much sadness, sorrow, grief about my father and my relationship with him, and covered that over with a lot of anger, And so I had to get in there and feel it all in order to release it. Now, was I being re-traumatized? Not at all. I was being liberated. That's what was happening. This is a problem, and most people don't understand this. I think there's a big difference between being re-traumatized. I would think that to be re-traumatized means I have to experience the same thing over and over again at the hands of different people, perhaps. That's how I would view it. And yes, I can probably go through it in my mind and re-experience it that way. But until I actually allow my body to release that emotional energy, I'm going to be stuck with it no matter what. And so this is where a lot of my shadow work comes into play. It's encouraging people to revisit the experience from a place of the adult coming and bringing loving support to the child. Exactly as you talk about. And and this is one of those rare times when I, as an adult, can say to my inner child, I know exactly what you're feeling. I know what you're feeling because I went through it myself. And now I can help you express that feeling and get it out of your body so it's not stuck there anymore. It's a beautiful, beautiful process. Something that anyone can do. And you don't have to have a super fancy therapist or shadow work facilitator to do it. It's probably easier if you do. Call it a facilitator for a reason, to make things easier. And also, I think the benefit of having a coach or a therapist or a facilitator available, it helps to make sure that you keep yourself safe in the process. And that I think is an important aspect of it too. But you're absolutely right. I have spoken to my inner little boy so many times now, and I've just reached this point where we have nice conversations now. It used to be he was so angry, he was angry, and I thought I had abandoned him, and I guess on some level I had. But yeah, it's beautiful when you can get to that place of healing where the adult comes to the child, says, I love you so much, and I'm so grateful that you're here. And yeah, I just feel so free and open and alive now because of that work.
Oh yeah, I 100% get that. And it was actually a walk on that heathland when I was actually talking to Jane, that the light bulb moment of actually the only person who had ever rejected me had been me when I changed my name from Jane to Sarah. Mm-hmm. Because I was saying, it almost as if I was saying to Jane, you've had all this happen to you. I can't cope with this anymore. I'm going to get rid of Jane with the hope that life will be better for Sarah. And of course it wasn't. Because it was just a continuation. But then the little one inside of me, sort of all those rejections she thought she'd had, now she'd really had a rejection.
All right. Yeah.
That was a real rejection because it was me. I did it to her. And it's just like, okay, I'm going to be Sarah now. Well, and Sarah Jane is what I was christened. It's just that they chose to call me by my middle name. But I am also a great believer in the name that our mother calls us as a child is the name we have chosen. And I find that I work with people, and some people's reaction is, no, I don't like my name. I don't like. And the number of people that have changed their name, they're an awful lot. It might only be slightly, so it really might only be slight, sort of a Catherine to a Katie, or a Katie to a Catherine, or a Sue to a Susan. And but it's still a change. There's still an aspect of rejection there. And I always ask permission to use the name that people's mother called them as a child. And
Right.
that is a powerhouse.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And when you think about it for a moment, I remember I went through a phase when I wasn't all that keen on my name. And in fact, I mean, I never changed my name. I never thought to do that. I just remember that I had this energy. I don't really like my name. Now, when I think about that, the truth is, I actually love my name. However, I didn't like the how do I describe this? My name in its current form, especially when I say the whole thing, David Douglas, really brings up memories of my mother being angry at me. And she would never use those names together unless she was really pissed off about something that I had done, which frankly happened quite a bit because I was a rebellious sort, Anyway, it wasn't that I didn't like my name. I didn't like that energy that was coming from her. So, yeah, I remember doing that name toning thing with you and feeling so much sadness come up when I heard you toning my name, and just releasing a lot of tears and sadness from that event. And at the end, feeling so relieved and so open again. I think that's something that we all need to do a little more of, a little more crying.
Oh, absolutely. What's it? Tears, they wash the windows of your soul, sort of. Absolutely. But I sort of think about name, and I think about why people don't like it, and very much about, I think, what you're saying, because but my sisters, Jackie, she was Jacqueline Ann, so if she was in trouble, it was Jacqueline Ann. Katie was Catherine Mary, and me, I'm guessing it was Sarah Jane. But as I said, I have my lack of memory because of I was such an unhappy child. But it's really a matter of how we heard it. And it's that constant, do this, do that, you're in trouble. And your name was used in so many negative ways. Don't get me wrong, they were probably used in an awful lot of loving ways as well. But we humans are very, very good at latching on to the negative rather than the positive. So rather than allowing ourselves only to be in memory of the loving, you've fallen over, you've grazed your knee, oh, come here, darling, sort of kiss your knee better, whatever. That happened to us as children. That's how my parents were. But that didn't take away from, and I obviously didn't like the Jane, and I didn't like the Sarah either. So.
Right.
So it's just one of those things. It's your name. People feel uncomfortable for the reasons that you said, for the reasons I've said, because the negative tones that have come, and that constant being in trouble or being told to do something. Oh, Sarah, will you go and do this? Oh, Sarah, will you go and do that? Have you done your homework yet? Have you done whatever yet? Have you made your bed? It's that constant.
Have you created world peace yet?
Exactly. Yes. Sort of the change you wish to see in the world, make sure you start with yourself. Yeah.
Exactly.
And And how can we be at peace with ourselves until such time as we learn to be at peace with ourselves?
Right. Right. Yeah, I think that the biggest learning that, well, I can speak for myself. The biggest learning that I have received is the importance of loving myself. It's one thing. I mean, and well, there's nothing more important than knowing the truth of who I really am. Once I know the truth of who I really am, it's much easier to accept that truth and then to find the place to love myself. That's been my experience. Sometimes, though, it's like, fake it till you make it. You got to pretend that you love yourself until you learn to accept and know the truth about who you are. This is not true for everybody, but that was kind of my experience. And I think that, this idea of being willing to recognize that the things that you had thought are bad about yourself may not be bad at all. They probably aren't, in fact. And I have also learned that almost virtually everything that we think, say, do, or feel is motivated at its deepest level by a desire to give or receive love. I think that's what we're all trying to do. And some of us do it in appropriate ways, and some of us do it in inappropriate ways. And that's what we see around us. So when we see violence, when we see war, we see all these horrible things going on in the world, they are the result of misguided attempts by a collective to give or receive love. Now, some people will say, I'm crazy. There's nothing loving about war. And I can agree with that sentiment up to some degree. But if you look at the people who get involved in doing war, almost all of them are doing it to protect their country, to protect their families, to do something for their families. And if that's not loving, I don't know what is. Now, the behavior itself may not be so loving, but the motivation behind it, I believe, has got some element of love associated with it, either giving or receiving. So that's just my philosophy, and it certainly rings true for me in pretty much every aspect of my life. So, yeah, and there's nothing more important. In terms of love, the prime target of your love should be you.
I'm one of those people that has a huge problem with the word love. I don't know whether I know what love is, but I care so deeply. I really do care so deeply. And maybe I have to, and maybe there are going to be others that listen to this, and it's just like, oh, I don't know what it means. Oh, but care? Yeah, I care. Oh, I really care. So maybe what you refer to as love is what I refer to as care. It's just a term, it's a different word, because I care very deeply. I really do. I do what I do because I care. And care is the word I'm comfortable with. Maybe it's because I heard the word love, but oh, darling, I love you, when mum sort of came and saw me in the hospital. I love you so much. And then she went away without me. What? What are you going to understand by the word love from somebody that walks away from you?
Exactly.
And those people who've gone through abusive relationships and abusive upbringings, etc., and people have used the word love, and then they do those things. That's not love. That's not even caring. Sort of. And I know what you said about sort of the war and defending your country, but then the people who are actually attacking your country, where's the love from that? It's a huge problem to me, this thing about, and it's religion. They all preach love, providing you believe what they believe. Sort of. Right. So
I think that you've hit on something very, very important here, I think. And I just like to reiterate this. Everybody who's involved in a war thinks they're on the right side.
Yeah.
You know, we're the good guys and you're the bad guys. That's just the way it is. And it doesn't matter who, who's right. I mean, I think that the result of war is absolute devastation, and it's terrible. War is a horrible thing. That doesn't change my opinion or my idea that the people who get involved in it are in their own way believing that they are doing something good. They are somehow contributing to their society, whatever. That's all I'm saying. And that's true, I think, on both sides of the fence. Okay. I also get what you're saying about maybe not even understanding what that word means, because there are people who've never experienced a positive expression of love, or they have experienced, kind of like you, a positive expression of love, but followed by a negative experience that immediately happened, leaving you to understand, well, what the hell is this love if she says those really nice words, makes me feel good, and then gone. I totally get it. It makes perfect sense to me. So you now have found another way to express the kind of emotion that you're talking about by using the word care. By the way, this same whole thing can happen with any emotion. I mean, think about this, for example. In typical, maybe English and certainly in Canadian way of rearing children, boys were not allowed to express fear or show tears. Girls were okay with that sort of thing. That's a girly thing to do. Boys don't do that. This is the kind of thing that we're taught. So what do I do when I'm feeling fear? I turn it into anger. And women may do the same thing. So for me, when you say I'm afraid, I'll say, I am not afraid. I'm pissed off. I will deny the fear and express the anger, even though the fear is what's really there. We all do this on some level. So.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But actually, as a girl, you will also hear big girls don't cry.
Yeah, really?
So it's not just to the boys. The girls get it too. As they get a bit older, it's just like big girls don't cry. It's just like, and it's so important to cry. If we don't have that release of that emotion, and we just bottle it up, and that can come out in many different ways, and it lets you know that it's time to deal with something. When you start getting these illnesses and ailments and stresses and strains and whatever, it's your body's way of saying you've got something inside here that you haven't dealt with, so that you can release it. And I think it was Brandon Bays, and she did a book called The Journey, and she was diagnosed with a football-sized tumor. And so she decided to take herself off, and she went into all organic, or to all the stuff that you have to do to help your body be as clean as possible. But she also created a couple of different journeys of being able to go back into your childhood and see situations and be a part of that, and to witness that, the adult with the child. And she managed to, without any operations, without any medication, to get rid of that football-sized tumor. But it took,
the body has an amazing capability of healing itself if we give it the right environment to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have to participate in every aspect of our journey. And it's really important to realize that there is stuff. And before we close, something I've been thinking for quite a while now, and somebody else who's now who I was speaking to only last week, who's a psychotherapist, and I've been thinking that post-traumatic stress is actually a reawakening of a childhood trauma that wasn't dealt with, and it now appears that within psychotherapy they're actually starting to believe that too.
Yeah, well, isn't that ultimately what a LifeQuake is?
Yeah.
Some kind of a wake-up call?
Yeah, absolutely. But then people who then really affected really badly, but it's something's happened that has just triggered an old undealt with trauma.
Right. Yeah. And here's one thing that I would say is a truism that many people can benefit from. Your traumas, whatever they are, they will come back to haunt you very, very gently at first. But the longer you ignore them, the stronger the energy will be to start paying attention. And this is why we have so many people who have midlife crises, because they wait and they just keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And eventually the pain level reaches a point where you cannot ignore it anymore. That certainly happened for me. And my hope, my desire in the work that I do is to help people get to that trauma while they're still young enough to be able to heal it so that the rest of their lives will be so much better, you know, because we shouldn't all be going through life suffering.
No, and we're not meant to do that for the whole of our life. But maybe
I don't think we're meant to do it for any of our life, but we all seem to do it.
Isn't that part of having a life experience?
Maybe.
You know, we just don't have to live in it, but we're very good at living in these things.
Yeah. Well, Sarah, this has been a really awesome conversation. I want to thank you for being here. Friends, the idea of a LifeQuake is not something it's not meant to scare you in any way. It's not meant to keep you from doing your own personal growth work. You've got two people here on this call who are more than willing to help you work through whatever challenges you may have. So all you got to do is reach out. You can reach out to Sarah. She has her contact information on the comments below, and I have my contact information there as well. Reach out, ask us for your support, and we'll do our best to help you out. Meanwhile, live your life. Remember the truth of who you really are. Come to grips with whatever has happened in the past. Embrace it, love it, accept it, and be grateful for it, and recognize where you are today.
Yeah.
Sarah, do you have any closing words you'd like to share before I finish up?
I'm going to use the word love. Care for yourself. You have to be the top of your list of the people you care about. Not at the bottom, not in the middle, not off it altogether with some people. You have to, if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to be there for everybody else.
Right.
Care about yourself. Be true to yourself. Be honest with yourself. Believe in yourself and trust in yourself. When you can do all of that, you will be able to bring so much more to others. And there's nothing selfish about that, because
Absolutely.
the caring for you means you can really bring that beautiful energy so much in a so much a better way than you can if you don't take care of you first.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you again for being with me. I know we're going to see more of each other as we're working on this new book. Friends, I want to say thank you for being here today, and thank you for watching this program. Remember, you can catch recordings of this and every other episode on my website at magnifessence.com. Before we go, I just want to remind you about my life mastery mantra. I'd like to encourage you to learn this and say it for yourself at least a few times each day. It goes like this. It's real simple. I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully embrace the magnificent being I am right now. I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. So until we meet again, my name is David McLeod. I'm your life mastery coach, wishing you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. I'll see you next time on Magnificence in Motion. Bye-bye for now.